Once these winds hit about 40 miles per hour sustained, no more deputies are going out. They cannot risk it. So if people are here and they do get into trouble and they dial 911, there's a good chance that help's not going to get here until Laura's through the area and these winds have died down. It was several hours ago, well, pardon me, about an hour and a half ago when we got word that I-10 had been shut down in Lake Charles, both directions. So that's it. No more anybody getting in or out of this area until Laura is finally finished with that. Good thing a lot of the refineries in this area had already done all their shut-in procedures. They had already shut things down to the point where they were running backup. I had mentioned it earlier, but you could see the lights. There was a refinery there. You can still see the flares. So you could see the lights earlier, clearly make out all the different shapes of the equipment in the facilities in that refinery. Those lights are now out. You can only see the flares. Where we're staying, we're at the Golden Nugget Hotel because this has got a good garage. It's up a little bit higher, so we thought it was about the best spot we could be in. There's a lot of oil field workers here as well. They've come in from the refineries, come in off those rigs, and they're sheltering here until Laura has passed. We are supposed to get the eye through here. That means we're going to get the eye wall. That is some of the most brutal winds you can imagine. That's also where you tend to see a lot of tornadoes. Once that eye passes, though, that's only about halfway through. Then we're going to have the back half that comes with it. And, of course, that means none of that water is going to start draining out until this storm is through this area, Lake Charles and the greater Calcasieu Parish area. Reporting live from Lake Charles, Robert Arnold, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
Robert, right behind you is L'Auberge, and I'd say about 2 minutes ago, I noticed in your live shot there was a car that was driving in that parking lot. Is that entire area evacuated, or what's the situation with L'Auberge and the Golden Nugget?
Yeah. L'Auberge is closed. We're here at the Golden Nugget. Tillman Fertitta was kind enough to allow members of the media to stay here. As I'd mentioned, there's also a lot of oil field workers here as well. But yes, this area is evacuated. L'Auberge is closed. That's why the parking lot is empty. Some of the people we've seen driving around, I couldn't make out that SUV, but I've seen security. There are still some people driving around security, just making sure no one's taking advantage of this situation. Interestingly, the sheriff has said looting has never been a problem in this area after storms, and he doesn't expect it to be this time, but he is warning people there's a curfew in effect. If you push deputies and you're out past that curfew, you are likely going to go to jail. And his jail is empty as it is right now because he sent all his prisoners farther north to other facilities. Dominique?
Hey, Robert, help us with your orientation right now. Is your back to the Gulf of Mexico? So I know you're in Calcasieu Parish. So is Cameron Parish south of you? Is your back facing Cameron Parish?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
And so that's
Cameron
what we're
Parish
seeing.
Is to the south. Technically, as the crow flies, yeah. Cameron Parish is going to be to the south of us here. What we have basically in our area is going to be Lake Charles, and not far from here, we're going to have Green Lake. A little farther south is going to be Moss Lake, and then you have, of course, the Calcasieu River that feeds into Lake Charles. I hope that helps, Chris.
Absolutely,
but,
it helps.
Cameron Parish is back that way.
And the one thing that I'm trying to get at, Robert, and you can probably help our viewers understand this, is back behind you where we're seeing those flashes of light. That's probably where the power outages are happening right now, right there along the Gulf, right?
Yes, exactly, because that's where the storm's coming. That's where Laura's coming ashore. That's where the winds are strongest right now. Like I said, we're getting some good gusts and everything, but it's not as sustained. We're expecting that to change, and we're expecting to get those just absolutely brutal, hammering winds that don't let up here probably within the next 30, 45 minutes, an hour at most, especially as that eye gets closer and closer to the Lake Charles area. And then, of course, we have to get through the eye wall, which is going to be the worst winds of them all.
And, Robert, it's probably good to clarify that we're not seeing lightning strikes behind you, but it's actually transformers that are blowing, which cast a blue light in the sky.
Right. Sometimes you get that blue light. Occasionally you get that green light as well. No, I have not seen any lightning strikes through here. It was interesting. Earlier this afternoon, we got a good rainstorm. We thought that was going to be the beginning, one of the outer bands, and there were some really spectacular lightning strikes earlier, but that was it. I have not seen any lightning since then.
Well, Justin said he was tracking he had the lightning striker on one of his radars back here in the studio. He didn't see any lightning.
No.
So, I mean, what we're seeing, Robert, and you can see those wind gusts are really picking up right there. What we're seeing are those big transformers are taking the brunt of Laura's sustained 150-mile-per-hour winds down there on the coast.
And that's usually one of the first things that's going to start going. You have those transformers that blow. You have some areas that have some of their electric underground. I've been in some coastal communities where they run those power lines underground, and it does save the electricity for a little bit longer. But no, those transformers are going to be the first to go, especially when you have winds this high.
And speaking of winds, we are checking with Justin right now on your wind speed. Okay, so right now, Robert, you're
What does he have?
experiencing 72-mile-per-hour winds at gusting right now.
Okay, well, I would feel, well, there we go. That's probably some of the best visuals you can get is when you can see that wind push the rain under the lights through that area. That's where you really get a sense of how strong that wind is. And we've got a little bit of a shoe because, like I was talking about, that refinery there coming off the water through there as that wind comes back around and whips everything through this area. That's when you start getting some of those stronger gusts. And, of course, as it comes up through the south as well.
Well, yeah, help our viewers understand that, Robert, because, again, you're probably, I'm guessing, having spoken to Frank and Justin and everybody, you're about, what, 40 miles inland from the coast, from the Gulf of Mexico, and you're seeing 72-mile-per-hour wind gusts where you are. You can only imagine what they're seeing down there.
Right, and we're going to be experiencing those same amount of winds, especially because, as Frank and Justin have both been saying, this is one of those storms that just is not going to lose strength easily. Usually what we see, we've seen a lot of storms. They approach the coastline. They're very strong. They're Cat 3s, they're Cat 4s, start talking about possibility of being a Cat 5. But the closer they get to land, they start to run out a little bit of steam, and they also start to lose a lot of steam once they hit land because the nice land masses tend to start breaking up those storms. That is not going to be the case with Laura. So, yeah, these winds are going to last for quite a while through this area, and it's going to take a lot to sap her strength.
And Robert, we've got Justin Stapleton's mic hot for you right now. He wants to talk to you.
Hey, Robert, just wanted to give you an update from where you're standing right now. It looks like the northern eye wall has just started to reach the coastline near Cameron. So they're seeing about 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So you've probably got, 40 miles inland. I'd say within the next hour, you're going to probably start seeing closer to about 90 to 100-mile-an-hour winds.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I'm sorry about looking down and digging my head, but it's like I said earlier, we've reached that point in every storm where the wind picks up every little tiny bit of dirt and rock, and it sends it flying into your face, so it makes it difficult to look forward. But thank you for the update, Justin. I appreciate it. It's a little hard. We feel a little cut off out here sometimes, so I appreciate that information.
Robert, I've got a quick question for you. I mean, we appreciate your reporting. We don't want you to be a hero to a fault here. So can you kind of walk us through exactly where you are and when things get too treacherous, where you can get inside to protect you and the crew?
Absolutely. Well, one of the biggest things for us, it was storm surge. So we wanted to find a place that was up high. So we're about 15 feet up high in this parking garage here at the Golden Nugget. Yep. Comes through. Pardon me as we go in through here. That's one of our colleagues. That's Renee, another photojournalist who's absolutely amazing. So we're here about 15 feet off the ground, so we feel we're in a good space to get away from the storm surge. There's our truck right there, our storm tracker, and this is giving us somewhat of a buffer against the wind. So when things come in, we can get in here. It's not nearly as bad as you can see. Comes through some of the gusts that are coming through. It'll penetrate through, but not much. Biggest thing is there's really nothing here that can fly around and hit us, and that was the other thing too. One of the things you have to look for when you cover these storms is any kind of debris. You heard Mario talk about tents and everything like that. We actually took down the one sign that was up here and put it to the side just so it wouldn't fly off later and kill us. And what I'm talking about are signs like that. So those are down there, and that's the last thing we want, are those things breaking off in our area. So that's why we've come up here.
Look at those swaying in the wind.
Yes, exactly.
There.
And you heard Mario talk about the people with tents and things like that. Anything becomes a projectile when you're talking about winds of this speed. So we're in a good area where we don't have to worry about that right now. But there's those winds that Justin was talking about coming through as that eye gets closer to us.
Well, and just to give a shout out too, you're paired up with Byron Nichols, otherwise known as Big Dog around here, who's
chief photographer.
weathered many a storm as well. So you've got a good teammate there.
I've weathered many a storm with Byron
Yes,
Nichols.
we do. He and I have been through a lot of these. He and I have been through a lot of these together, so I always feel like I'm in a really, really good hands with him.
You know, the photojournalists are oftentimes the unsung heroes in this because we see Robert, we see everyone in front of the camera, but they're working and putting in, yeoman's work as well. Right. Hey, you mentioned Renee, and from what I understand, Renee, if she's still standing there and if you can grab her, I think it would be great. I think Renee grew up in Lake Charles. So here she is covering a storm in her hometown. See if she's willing to kind of share what her thoughts are on this storm, a Category 4 coming ashore just south of where she literally grew up.
Yeah, she's here. Renee, Chris wants to talk to you. Since you grew up in this area, you've seen a lot of the storms through here. Kind of talk about this. You have family here still.
Yes, my mom and dad both evacuated. They're actually at my place right now in Houston, so it was kind of weird coming back to nothing really because all my family and friends, cousins, they're all gone. They went like Mississippi way, but I I was here for Rita. I actually was working. I was straight out of college, and that was like my first major storm right after Katrina, because Katrina didn't really touch us at all. We just kind of got like a little bit of an outer band, but really nothing. Rita was like, it was very similar with the path and with the wind and the rain whipping through. When I was here, we were working at a hospital. That's where my TV station went. It was the local NBC affiliate here, and they like brought us to a hospital. We like stayed live streaming like the whole entire time, and we would go out to the garage and check it out. And it's kind of similar with the bands and how they're coming and the wind speed and the rains. But this area here, L'Auberge, was very, very new. And the golf course was totally flooded out because I came here and shot some stuff the next morning after, and it was just like a river. This whole little area, like that's the Preon Lake Road over there, that was flooded out. There's a couple of homes over by the bayou that were kind of flooded out too. But I moved after that, so I wasn't here for the rest, like Ike and all that. But I can tell you, definitely Rita did do some devastation. Like McNeese Stadium was all flooded. I actually have photos of all that too. It was pretty crazy to see all that. So I'm feeling like this is going to be very similar to Rita's damage.
And I know you said your parents are, thankfully, they have a great daughter, and they're at your house in Houston, though. It's got to be an awful feeling to go through this.
It is. I'm kind of nervous. You know, my shift starts back at 7, 8, but it's like, how can I sleep? This is my hometown, you know? I'm like worried, like I'm anxious. Like I went to my parents' house and taped some windows and fixed a bowl of gumbo that's still in the fridge, and I just couldn't even eat the whole bowl because I was just anxious. Like, I'm just so worried about everybody, not just my family, just everybody. Because I know a couple of people that stayed behind. As a neighbor on my street that stayed, a couple of people my brother knows that are like sick and like wheelchair bound, and it's just like they waited too late to get out. So I'm just like really anxious, just worried about people.
But you get their address so we can go try and check on them afterwards.
Hopefully we can make it, you know, make it out of here. I just don't know, because I know this area is prone to flooding because of the river here and the bayous around here. So we'll see how it looks tomorrow if we can get out.
Yeah. How long does it take usually to drain? I mean, I was here for Rita, but it was only a couple of days. You lived through it. How long does it take to drain through here?
I mean, I feel like that next day it drained pretty quickly. Like for the main roads, because there's a lot of trees down, power lines, so a lot of roads were incompassable because of that. So that was the main trick was, you know, we had a lot of flat tires on our news cars here, and, you know, I was with another co-worker of mine. We were riding around. We were like the flat fixture crew. Like we left our car at blah, blah street, and yeah, it was just really nuts just navigating the roads with all the debris and everything that just was taking over the streets. But it didn't really take too long to drain down, I don't feel like. But the power was definitely out for like, I know for a fact, a week.
That's the worst part, is the power is out for a long time, and that's just miserable.
I saw the transformers blowing. Did you see that?
Yeah, Byron told me about it. Actually, I think Chris in the studio saw it, and Byron saw it before I did because my back was
that direction and this direction. So I'm pretty sure it's a lot of power outages in the city right now. So.
But when you can't do it, it's unavoidable in winds like that.
Exactly, very unavoidable. They're just whipping through. When I was driving back, it was just starting. I timed it out, looking at the radar. I was like, okay, I can get back, because the winds were just starting to make the street signs blow. A couple of red lights were swaying. I was just like, yep, it's time to get back to home base.
All right, thank you, Renee. Go get some rest. I know, you don't have to be on till 7.
She's not sleeping,
She's amazing.
Robert,
She's amazing and dedicated. No, I couldn't either. I can't sleep in these things either.
Well, that's the thing, especially when it's your hometown. And what I got most out of that interview, listen to this. So Renee's family from Lake Charles evacuated to Houston, right? Our 6 o'clock producer, Erica Young, who grew up in Cameron Parish, south of where you are, along the coast, where this thing is coming ashore, her family evacuated to Lake Charles. Okay, and so we're going to speak to her because she tells me that she is on a group text with her family right now, checking in with mom, checking in with dad, checking in with her brother, and we're going to talk to her coming up because, again, I think those stories resonate with people because you can understand when it's your hometown.
It's about family.
It's everything you got.
It's about family.
It's everything you got.
Robert, I'm so curious, as you were talking to Renee, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I know here in our coastal communities, we were talking about this yesterday, there were mandatory evacuations here along our coastal communities. I personally am surprised to hear that people stayed back in Lake Charles and that everybody wasn't scooped up and taken out of there.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I was going to talk about that when I talked to the sheriff this afternoon. He said, a lot of people think that when we say mandatory and you don't leave, we're going to send, large men to your house and pick you up and make you leave, because that's not the case. He goes, we're not going to force anybody to leave their home. Mandatory is just the strongest term we can possibly use to tell people to leave the area. It's also the warning to people that when it gets too bad, we can't come and save you until the winds start to die down. And as a matter of fact, the sheriff here in this parish, in Calcasieu Parish, Tony Mancuso, it was his first year as sheriff when Rita hit the area, and he said he thought that was a once-in-a-lifetime, and he prayed that was a once-in-a-lifetime storm. And you could kind of hear it in his voice. He was a little beleaguered that he's going to be going through something, if not the same, a little bit worse than Rita was.
And Robert, remind our viewers what the National Hurricane Center said about that region and the storm surge tonight.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It was that word. I had never seen the National Weather Service use the term unsurvivable before.
Wow.
And they used it over and over again. Unsurvivable storm surge. We hear life-threatening, potentially deadly. This is the first time I've heard the term or seen the term unsurvivable. And that really, really struck me, because that's a very definite term. They are saying if you stay, you're going to lose your life. This storm surge is not anything that you can survive. And that's why I pointed it out during my 10 o'clock live shot, because that really, really struck me as to how serious the Weather Service was trying to warn people about the severity of Laura.
Well, and that really dovetails your explanation about mandatory evacuations, because if they're not getting people out of there, then they're at least trying to drive home the message of what can happen if you stay.
Right. And, the thing that's interesting, I'm from Biloxi, Mississippi originally, so I grew up with a couple of hurricanes and then came to Houston and had a lot more and seen a lot more in my career. And the one thing that's kind of amazing about people who live near the coast is the salt water gets in their veins. They feel that they can weather anything. They've weathered a lot of storms. They've weathered hurricanes in the past. And it's just, this is where they live. They love everything about where they live. They love the culture. They love the area, and they just don't want to leave it. And they think, hey, this is just part of life down here on the coast. I can deal with it. If I couldn't deal with it, I wouldn't live here.
But as we know, with every storm, it's different. And we look at what Harvey did to Houston and what a different signature that was for us. And people who were completely unaffected in previous storms have a completely different story to tell post-Harvey.
Well, it's amazing to me, everything I always get at, how does this storm compare? Was this storm really that bad? And I say that is such a sliding scale. If your house was not destroyed during a hurricane, that wasn't that bad a hurricane. If your house was destroyed during a hurricane, that's going to be the worst hurricane you've probably ever experienced in your life. So I hate to be mean, but I hate that question, because it really depends on how it affects somebody. So for Houstonians, everybody kind of collectively held their breath. Thankfully, we dodged the area, so that's not going to be that bad. It's going to be devastating for the people of Southeast Louisiana.
Yeah, and you think about those first responders, I think you hit the nail right on the head, because, they take an oath to serve and protect, but they also have family and loved ones that they want to return home to. And so a lot of these times, I think, the National Hurricane Center will put out these warnings and they'll say these things because they do want it to resonate with people, that if you are going to stay behind, you're on your own terms.
Right. You can't get help.
Right. And if you think about it, right. Well, I was going to say, if you think about it, if you put, these ambulances out on the road with, which are usually much taller, much higher, much more susceptible to the winds, you're endangering them. So then if they get in an accident and they come down, then you have to send more of the EMTs, more deputies, more police officers out to try and rescue those people. And you start compounding the problem. That's why, and you heard the sheriff say it earlier, it breaks his heart to say it, because they are here to protect and serve, but they just can't risk other lives once the storm reaches a certain point, because it's almost, as he put it, at one point, it's almost like a suicide mission once these winds get so high and the surge starts coming in and the roads are impassable at that point. They have to wait until the winds die down.
All right, Robert, we're going to bring Justin Stapleton back into the conversation, because he's monitoring the wind speed and the wind gusts right there where you are.
Yeah, they're starting to pick up. I'm getting a couple of different reports where they're getting anywhere from around 75 to 80 miles an hour. As I just heard Frank a second ago, and we mentioned, Robert, that the northern eye wall has just hit Cameron, so they're just south of you at this point, and they've already picked up 101 mile an hour wind gusts in Cameron, and conditions are going to continue to go downhill here.
So, Frank, that's what, 30 miles miles south of where Robert is right now, roughly?
Yeah, exactly. The northern eye wall is now in Cameron Parish.
And how fast is this storm moving?
About 15 miles per hour. And still, the 12 o'clock update just came in, and we still have 150-mile-an-hour sustained winds within this hurricane.
Wow. And so that I'm assuming the emergency wind warning, I guess, continues at this hour?
Yeah.
As far west as Beaumont?
Oh, yeah. Well, in a second ago, I actually just saw one of our, the meteorologist, Justin Horn, over at our sister station in San Antonio, is in Orange, Texas, and it looks like the conditions there are starting to go downhill. He was clocking some wind gusts upwards of 68, nearly almost 70 miles an hour at this point.
And that's, I mean, way
Orange,
north and
just
west.
right across the border, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. Again, you're monitoring these pictures from Robert Arnold and his photojournalist Byron Nichols there in Lake Charles. They're in the parking lot of the Golden Nugget. If you live here in Houston, you may go over there and do a little gaming, and so you know where we're talking about, right there off of I-10. It's looking right now, his camera is pointed in the direction of the Gulf, where Laura is, again, just starting to come ashore, and the eye wall of that storm coming ashore right there in Cameron Parish.
It's really a remarkable image. Thankfully, our crew is high above in a parking garage there, so they're safe, and they have an opportunity to be able to break away and get inside if needed. So we will continue to check in on Robert and Byron and Renee and our crew out there and make sure everybody's doing all right and get the latest for you. We'll take a quick break. We're back right after this.